Okay, we are back to normal programming after taking a little break for Hanukkah, and we did, you know, uh, Rambam Hilchos Hanukkah, and I at least I can't speak for the victims, you guys out there in cyberspace, but I had a great time doing Lumdus. So I'm announcing right here a new series. Believe that it'll launch on Tuesday in the Chavrusa with the Rosh Hashiva series. We're going to do the Shoroshim with the Hasagas and the Ramban. That is, the Ram wrote 14 lengthy, entries before the Sefer Mitzvah, explaining his model of what qualifies to be counted as a mitzvah, right? And oh God, hold on a second, please. I'm going to stop my dog from getting into something. Hey, Sonny, no. Sorry about that, but you guys out in cyberspace, you guys are used to this already. If you stuck with me this long, anyways, the Rambam has 14 entries as to lengthy entries explaining his sheet as what qualifies to be counted as amongst the Taryag mitzvahs, counted as a whole assay or a whole los assay, and what should not be counted in that count, and which is very lumdish. It gives us also a perspective on his view on Torah in general. And the Ramban wrote very lengthy criticisms, which also gives also an insight into the Ramban's view on Torah in general. Very fundamental stuff, very lumdish stuff. The Megillas Esther, who wrote it was a later Rishon that wrote a whole pirush on the Rambam and the Ramban and what they're arguing on, says that he never really understood Gemara until he worked on, the sheet of the Rambam, sheet of Ramban, what is the machlokas between them, and then he got a greater insight into the inner workings of the Gemara, more than the Svarim written, directly steering into those topics, like the Sefer Krisos, the Alichos Olam, says, it was no better way to get into the guts of how the Gemara thinks than to work on these machloks and Rambam and Ramban. So that's what we're going to do, Bezrat Hashem. Okay, so without further ado, we resume Reishis Chochma. We're in Perek Shlishi of Shar Hayira, in this edition, what's called entry Chaf Aleph. A person has to always be ashamed to do anything wrong, because he has to be ashamed because the Shekhinah is everywhere. God's glory, which is the Shekhinah, fills the whole world. You should not transgress any mitzvah of Hashem's mitzvahs. And I also wrote the Chovas Alavavis and Shar Varas Elokim Parakeh. Amar Chassid says, the righteous one who wrote the Chovas Alavavis says, don't go, don't rebel against your master, and he's watching you right now. Now this era, they were talking about this type of era of just always acknowledging that Hashem is with you at all times. This type of era that we're talking about, right? This is regarding this is the type of year of which the possibility above or you also God, made all the fanfare by Matan Torah to scare the heck out of us. So Moshe explains, you should have his fear on your face so as not to sin. Will be a rabbi say, but Mechilta explains there, Nedarim Parak Sheni, also Nedarim, Daf Chofam Beis, El Shoinam. This is the words of Chazal, Tanya, Busha. To have God's fear on your face, this is shame. You should be ashamed to sin. So this type of year is called Busha. Right? And this type of year is also called Al Pnechem, as he's going to explain. And thus you will not sin. The pasuk goes on to explain that teaches you that having the meat of being shameful, could bring to fear of sin. So it's good, to be shameful. So now, even though law Baishon law made, but you make an exception that with your Rebbe, you drill him and you don't be embarrassed to ask questions. But that's the exception. law by shalom. But otherwise, you should be a bosh ponim, right? You should have shame. Being a person who has shame is a person who doesn't, would also be ashamed to sin. People who are shameless sin right, left, and center, right? We can amru, and from here Chazal say, it's a good sign to be a baishan. Acharim Omrim and others say it like this in Chazal: Kol adam mitzbashal merachot, to anyone who has busha, anyone who gets embarrassed, he has shame, right? He does not quickly sin. But it goes over anyone who is shameless, has no boshas upon him. His forefathers in our side, he's probably not even really Jewish. Uh, maybe he's from the Erev Rav, but not really a full, pure breed Jew. Ben Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov that stood at Har Sinai. And you understand why, they say that, because at Har Sinai, we had all the fanfare, all right, body trust you up there, low built-in techatol. They should have the shame to not fear, right? So this guy's forefathers must have not been at Har Sinai, because he's shameless. And Muhammad Har Sinai was to give us shame. So we're in the next Sif Chaf Beis. So now let's take a look in the in the Lashonos of Chazal over here that the Torah said fear on the face, right? And they said that that must mean shame. And what tipped them off that fear on the face is called shame? Because it's on the face. Because pure fear is in the heart. So it wasn't on your face. So on your face adds something, right? Because you're in a belief conscious by because pure fear is just in the heart, as we explained before. And also, it adds alpnechem on your face, the builder, so you shouldn't sin. Because you have fear on the face, you won't sin. So these were the two diukim. He's trying to get into the head of Chazal. Chazal see a puzzle. Yira on face, so you don't sin. On face, so you don't sin. Right? They were medactic from both words, both statements. Al Prechem and Levuti Techato v'Amru, and he said Shariashi Busha Baponi. When you're the Yira that's on the face is Busha, because when a person's ashamed, you see it on his face. He blushes, turns white and blushes, So obviously it's something that you could see on the face. That's embarrassment. That's shame, right? Right. And that's Mevios Yerachet, right? And that's that type of shame brings them to fear of sin. Vabusha. Now, what is the busha? What are you ashamed of? So God is everywhere. What are you ashamed of? Shalom Mizpach b'divrei olam mibnei adam v'hu tzanua b'maas. Avchei Shalom Mizpach v'enu mistakov v'yaram mora emas b'chuso shel melech olam olav. So how do you play it out? Is what I meant to. Is what he meant to say. What is the busha? Of course, we explained before. The busha is, of course, you're ashamed as if God's watching you. How can you not be ashamed to sin if you know God's everywhere, Shechina's everywhere, and you're rebelling against the king right in front of him. He's asking now, how do you act it out? How do you act out this busha in action so as to inculcate it, if that's the right word, to internalize it. You have to act things out, as we know in all the midas. You act things out, and then hergol seteva. Once you're accustomed to it, it becomes your nature. Right. So how do you act out? How do you make yourself a person who has the positive attribute of having shame? A person has shame in this world, in earthly affairs from other people. And you're very, private about what you do. You don't show off. And, in general, you don't want your affairs to be public. But also when people talk to you, you're a bit shy. You don't look them in the face. And it's not because you're embarrassed of the person necessarily, but you're embarrassed to be, prideful, right? So you look down right? Out of shame because you're standing in front of the king. Right? So it's like, you have the awe of the kingdom of the king. So you look down. Also, he brings you Gersa Ramban, right? That, if you want to be humble, right? Right? Speak softly. Speak softly. Zu inyan busha. This is the concept of busha. From that you come to Yiraschet. Ubatikunim. Now we get into the Tikunei Zayar. Excuse me. So Abpin Sumkim Babaishes. Right? You have a red face because of shame. This like Kisufa Mishmai, but that shame should be being ashamed of heaven. Sinun Yirel Kim, and those are the Yirel Kim. Ad Kal Shon, these words of Zohar. So the Zohar already says it, echoes the other sources in Chazal. Right, that busha, from you should be, really have it, and the busha should show on your face. You should be red-faced, out of shame, because you are ashamed of heaven. You are the fear those who fear God, right? So shame is to be God-fearing, right? So now the idea of Yirat Chet, right, was further explained by the Ran, Rabbeinu Nisim ben Ruven, and in his Pirush on the Brisa of Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, the famous one of Zirus, the one that Mesilas Yesharim is based on. Zirus maybe days Rizus, Vamar Sham. It says that Kedusha maybe the day Yiraschet, being holy, according to some Girsos, it goes in this order of Kedusha maybe the day Yiraschet. Kedusha, being holy, brings to fear of sin. Yerachem maybe the day Anava, and fear of sin brings to humility. So on, that was the girsa that they had. So the Ran explains, Pirush Yerachet, he explained Yerachet, Shayora me'achote, kiyora min ha'oyev, right, me'achet, hayore me'achet, kiyora min ha'oyev. The Ran says this. You have to be afraid of sin like you're afraid of your enemy. But Shimao says, in a matter that it's an additional benefit, additional positive attribute for the person. That the fear of God should be so instilled in his heart until he is scared to sin, really scared of the sin. Scared of the sin, like not just scared of God and therefore you don't sin, but even scared of the sin, like you view the sin like an enemy. You run away from sin like you run away from fire. Can you go as far away as you can? Venirali, and the Ran goes on to say, Kech yechta b'fnei hamelech shel fanav v'yavi lefanav psoles ba'averes. Sha'klipa giron and gras b'kedusha chatoim. Sorry, I think it sounds like this is actually the Reishis Chochma talking again. Right, but I'm not sure whether it's still the Ran talking or the Reishis Chochma talking. But yeah, it sounds like the style of the Reishis Chochma. Right, so Yiraschet, saying to me, Yiraschet is to be afraid to sin because of how disgusting sin is. The Ramchal says the same word in Mesilas Yesharim on the entry of Yiraschet. You're disgusted of sin. It makes it like three different levels. You're a sa'onesh, you're afraid of the punishment. Yiraschet is you're afraid of sin because sin is disgusting. That is exactly what he's saying over here. You don't want to sin because of how disgusting sin is. If you're going to sin in front of the king and you bring before the king, garbage, which is Averus. Shaklipa Geron Agrasura, because the klipa, what is, you know what klipa is? So that's why I think it's him talking, because it's Kabbalistically inclined. That wasn't the language of the Ran. Klipa, right? The peels, the husk is like something that's stripped off from the kedusha. Like Batsheva says to me and my son Shlomo will be chatoim. We'll come out short if Adoniyahu is made the king, and we're like guilty of having rebelled against him. We'll come up short. Giron, garua, lousy, and that's what the klipa is like. You create a deficit in kedusha, right? So you don't want to do that. You don't want to do such a dirty thing, right? So that's I'll peep shot. You're at a chet is that which indeed is what we said. The Ramchal says the same message in Mesilas Yesharim. You're at chet is like I don't want to sin. Sinning is disgusting, right? I'll do one more entry. Abraham in Pirshiyat Chedi Imai Law, and in Raya Mehimna, which is we said many times. That's a part of Zohar that was written with the inspiration of the Neshama of Moshe Rabbeinu, which generally addresses Tamei Mitzvah. So Pirsh over there they explain Shiyat Chedi Imai Law that the fear of sin is Bina. Imai Law, the heavenly mother. That refers to the midah called Bina. As the pasuk says, I think it's in Koheles, or it's in Koheles, or Mishlei. Keim labina tikra. It's in Mishlei. It's one of Shlomelch's books. Call Bina your mother, right? Imai Law, right? Tshuva. Now, so Imai Law, Bina is also the midah from which tshuva comes from, right? That's the makom shabali tshuva. We just had Hanukkah, so you probably once heard about 7 is Teva, and the 8th is Lamala Min Teva. The 8th bottom up is Bina, and that's B'Makom Shabali Chavondim. The tzaddik, right, he gets Teva right, because he never sins. He gets it right. The Baal Tshuva who falls low has to go even higher, to compensate. And he has to draw on the power of Bina to pull him up again. Right, so Bina's Tshuva, that's black and white, throughout the Zohar. Bina's Tshuva. But the what's being added by Raya Mehimna is that Yiraschet is also. So Yiraschet and Bina and Tshuva are all A equals B, B equals C, A equals C. V'zel Shono. Right? So it is the words of the Raya Mehimna. Mitzvah ihu nafsha. Mitzvah is connected nefesh. So now nefesh is connected, that's the power of soul, which, gives us the ability gives a spiritual dimension to our actions. That's mitzvahs, actions. Ruach tar, now ruach is what gives us a spiritual dimension to our speech. And that's Torah, we speak divrei Torah. We know law medrash ikar. So now with this, we have established, Chazal have established, law medrash ikar, ela maisa. The medrash is not the ikar ela maisa, because listen, learning Torah is not enough. Only Torah enlo. You have to be lomed al minas lasos, which is the mitzvah, right? Which is tikkun hanefesh, and we had a lot in this, at the very beginning of this sefer. Ubasa achra amru, and elsewhere Chazal say, the Raya is quoting from other sources in Chazal. You have to have yirat chet before your Chochma, and then your Chochma is sustained. You want your Chochma sustained, have Yirat Chet before, put it before Chochma. Should be the basis. And then your Chochma will be upheld. But if you want to put your wisdom ahead of your Yirat Chet, right, then your Chochma will not be Makuyim. Yirascheto imayla. So yiraschet is imayla tshuva, right? Right. So yiraschet is imayla, which is bina, which is also the meat of tshuva. I mean, that's the prime motivator to do tshuva, is that you feel really bad that you sinned, that you're really scared of the fact that you sinned, and that's what's going to motivate you to do tshuva. So he's saying it's not like even from two separate places; it's all same heavenly root. Yiraschet leads right into tshuva because they come from the same place. Chochma Iba, now Chochma, as we know, is Abba Ilah, is the Heavenly Father. That's, the meat of Chochma is referred to as Abba, right? And the meat of Bina is referred to Ima, right? So karaktim hazira di mitzvah sharle Torah. So now, of course, so now you say, well, Chachma is higher than Bina. Well, yeah, so is Torah higher than mitzvah, right? But still, as the Zohar explains, the Rayam Himna, kad aktim hazira di mitzvah sharle Torah. You have to have the lower thing first, the smaller thing first, as a foundation, and then the higher thing sits, on the foundation, which is the lower thing. So if you have mitzvah, Shalei Torah, a person who's a bar mitzvah, right, he does mitzvahs, so Torah will dwell on that person because he's committed to doing mitzvahs. He's naaseh v'nishma in the literal sense. Naaseh do mitzvahs, then nishma, he'll divrei Torah, and the Torah will settle on a healthy basis of a person who does mitzvahs. The Yuvav, because we know, Torah is the Vav. So, I should say that mitzvah, which is nefesh, is parallel to the final hay of Yud Kei Vav, okay? The final hay, the lower hay. That's Keneged nefesh, Kayadua, also Keneged the midah of Malchus, right? And that's where Mice is, and that's where mitzvah is. The nefesh gives us the power to do, gives us the spiritual dimension to our Maisim. So that's the hay. And then Torah is Tiferes, and that's the Vav. So you put the bottom hay there, then the Vav sits on top of the bottom hay. Right? V'kad aktim yira l'chochma diu hay ilah, shari le'chochma diu yud, the hey ilah, shari le'chochma. Now, Bina, which is yira ilah, the higher yira. So Bina, which is the higher yira, is the first hay of the Shem, which is on top of the Vav. Right? And when you put the hay in place, so Sharle Chochma, so the midah of Chochma, which is the Yud, now dwells on top of it. Vikri Ben, at that point, you're called a good son. Because you, the person, are called a good son. You're, good son because also everything's aligned. You've got your father, mother, right? Your higher father and mother, and you have your Torah and Midas, and you have your Maisa. Now you're a Ben Torah, right? You have to do it in the proper order. Going bottom up, first laying the foundation, first Maisa, Mitzvah, Hey, Nefesh, then Vav, Ruach, Torah, Tiferes, Emes, on that, and stacking on top of that the first Hey of the name, which is the higher Hey, the Hey Ilah, Bina, Tshuva, Yirat Chet, and that's Yiraso, Kodem, Sachmasel, then the Chochma, the Yud. And then everything now is properly stacked up, and you're called a Ben. And we can't bani matem la Hashem okechem. That's when you truly fulfill the pasuk. Bonim atem la Hashem elokechem ken yirotzen. Discuss that we're doing tshuva. Discuss that we're learning just a lot of Zohar. We should see ukmishchinta ma'afra, and Am Yisrael should have just be zocher to gulas v'yeshuas. Amen. Ken yirotzen.